In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can unlock effortless growth for your business by finding something I refer to as market resonance. This has generated more than $2 million worth of revenue and many multiples more of that for our partners. And this is basically for B2B companies that want to grow with inbound leads. So you want your ideal customers coming to you and wanting to work with you. So let me get into the core concept here. And what I'm going to argue to you is that market resonance is the MVP, the most valuable player in your entire growth and marketing system. And here's what I mean by that in practice. So if you're watching this, you're probably in this state at the moment. We call this doing marketing. So what happens is, you've got a great business, you want to grow. And so you go to yourself and you say, well, I want to grow, I should probably do some marketing. And so you go out and hire a Google Ads agency, or you hire a LinkedIn outbound company, and you do some marketing. The trouble is, if your messaging isn't clear and you don't have the right growth assets, then you've got an unclear market message. Doing marketing is not going to help you. And so what usually happens is that leads to kind of average or poor results. You might get some results, but it's probably not going to be an amazing result. And then there's nothing that we can really use to further clarify our market message. And so we get stuck in this cycle of kind of doing more and more marketing, but not really growing. And that might resonate with you, right? If you're jumping from channel to channel and you're not really seeing the result that you desire, you're going from tactic to tactic and you're not really driving a great result, then you're probably stuck in this state now. So what we're aiming to do is kind of flip the script on that and approach it from completely the opposite way. So we start by trying to produce a message that really, really resonates with our audience. And then we run targeted marketing campaigns, putting it in front of the people that we think we can help. And typically what happens there is it leads to great results because we've got a message that really, really resonates and we're running targeted campaigns distributing that message to the marketplace. And the beauty of this is that we get really strong positive results from the marketplace, which we can then feed back into the message to continually improve it over time. So whereas in the previous example, you've got a flywheel of basically staying in the same place or potentially even going backwards, within this flywheel, it spins faster and faster because it improves and improves over time. And in my view, finding market resonance makes absolutely everything easier in your growth process. When you have this, growth feels quite effortless. But without it, it feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill. So if you feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill, it's because you haven't found market resonance. I would also argue that even the best performance marketer in the world, so the best Google advertiser or the best LinkedIn advertiser in the world, is not going to achieve great results unless they have a message that really, really resonates. And conversely, you can get an average performance marketer, someone like me, for example, and you can achieve great results if you have a great message and something that truly resonates. So for example, when we launched B2B as a business, I was the one doing all of the performance marketing. So I was creating the content, I was running the ads, and I would call myself a good performance marketer, but I'm certainly not an expert and I'm certainly not world-class at performance marketing. And yet we achieved really great returns very quickly because we had a message that really, really resonated with the marketplace. And I would argue that tweaking or refining your message can actually lead to growth, even if you're not spending any more on your marketing campaigns, because you can actually get a 10x return from changing the message. You're already getting traffic and attention, and it can significantly increase your returns overall just by changing your message and just by changing your positioning. And because you get that organic resonance factor, you get what's called dark social, so people sharing it offline. And then you get the ideas of offline and online virality as well. And that can have a huge impact on your growth engine, even without spending any more money on marketing. So I'm actually going to take this one step further here and argue that your message, or your thesis, as we sometimes call it, actually is your business. This is fundamental to your business. And getting it right is going to make or break your success. If you think about it, nearly all the most successful companies in the world, they're not selling products or service. They're selling a point of view. They're selling a thesis. So if we look at HubSpot, for example, they've done this fantastically well. Obviously less so in recent years, but when they first launched, they're really just a CRM. So they're a glorified spreadsheet when they launched their business. But they had somehow convinced the marketplace that just having the CRM was going to help their business grow. And this is not a knock on their product. I know lots of companies use it. I've used it in many businesses myself. So it's not saying that their product isn't any good, but they managed to position it as just buy a CRM and you'll be able to grow your business, which is amazing. Obviously, Apple are a great example where you're buying into the brand and the message and the sort of idea of design and beautiful products and all this kind of thing. You're buying into that as much as you're buying the iPhone or the iPad or whatever you're buying. I'm sure most people watching this, you're probably familiar with Mr. Alex Hormozy, and he's got a very particular style and a kind of methodology around growth. And as much as working with his company, you're actually buying into his methodology and buying into his approach to growth. Dollar Shave Club, another really good example where you're not actually buying razors, you're buying the thesis that people should be able to get great razors, cost effective, and get them delivered to their home on a subscription, which was very transformational and very disruptive at the time. So all of these big, well-known companies, what they're doing is they're selling a thesis, they're selling a point of view. And then if people buy into the thesis, that's one step towards them buying into the business. And that's what we've really got to do in our business. A really good example of this as well is Taranga. So when we first launched our business, we were an SEO agency called Taranga. And we actually evolved our thesis over time, and it's kind of transformed our whole business. So when we launched, our products and service was very much around SEO and organic growth through SEO. And at the time, this was a really powerful way to grow a B2B company. But quite quickly, I realized that people need more than just SEO to grow. They actually need a much more holistic approach. And that's where I narrowed in on market resonance as the most important thing. And so we actually kind of updated our thesis. And then that meant that we updated our product and service, we updated our sales, and we also updated our marketing process. So really, this fundamentally transforms your business, and getting it right will make or break your success, in my opinion. So I hope by now you're bought into the concept of how important market resonance is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how to find it and the framework that you can follow to find market resonance. So the primary objective here, like I said, is to find market resonance. So find the way of communicating your offering that really connects deeply with your audience and gets them excited to want to work with us. And then ultimately, off the back of that, we want a system for distributing that message and then consistently driving very profitable and predictable inbound revenue or inbound growth. And what we're doing here is we're taking a scientific approach. So it's a testing and iterating approach. And the idea is it's until we find market resonance. So it's a case of when we find it, not if. So the only way you can not find market resonance is if you give up before you find it. And then finally, you need to solve this in sequential order. I see a lot of people skipping steps in this process. So they go and worry about their sales process or their pricing, or they hire a marketing agency when they haven't actually really clarified their product market fit hypothesis, and they haven't actually started generating leads yet, and yet they're already ready to hire a marketing agency. So you have to solve this in sequential order, and there's various milestones that we're going to go through now. So we'll start here, which is to create or update our product market fit hypothesis. Now, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get absolute clarity on who our ICP is. So who is our ideal customer? The transformation that we're providing them. So where are we taking them from and to? What's the before state? What's the after state? And then what are the unique insights we can share with that marketplace? And so that's the core concept of a product market fit hypothesis. And what you'll do is you'll move on to the next step when you've got a clear idea of this and it's documented well and shared within your team. We then come on to creating our growth assets. We call these foundational growth assets. So these are designed to capture that product market fit hypothesis that we've just created and build assets around them that are designed to take traffic or take cold prospects and turn them into warm leads. So typically what that looks like in practice is a sales letter, maybe a video sales letter, and ideally some case studies and some transformational, powerful case studies. So this is sort of the growth asset stack that we like to aim for. All a sales letter and a video sales letter are is just encapsulating that product market fit hypothesis or encapsulating your thesis as an organization, knowing that if people buy into that, then that's one step towards them buying into you. And the assets that we create here are incredibly valuable. It's hard to overstate how valuable these things are. And they can be used for many years once we find something that works really well. So our current video sales letter, for example, we've been running for over 2 years now, and it's generated millions of dollars worth of revenue for us. There are companies that I worked with 4 or 5 years ago who are still using the same landing page copy. They're still using the same video content. They're still using some of the same positioning and messaging that we worked on together. And so once you get this right, it can last for many years, and it's an incredible, valuable asset for your company. And then you just want to build a simple funnel around these assets, which is designed for simplicity and kind of maximum conversion. So that's the funnel stage of this process. And you'll move on to the next step once you've produced your growth assets and you've got a simple funnel where you're housing those assets. So now we're moving into the traffic or lead gen stage of the process. And this is where you're going to drive traffic to those assets. So I don't have time to go into the whole process of doing this here because there's a lot of nuance. It really depends on your business. But typically in B2B, that's either going to be LinkedIn or it's going to be Google search, which are your primary channels. And it really depends on your business and your marketplace. And if you're not getting any leads at all after the consistent effort for 30 to 90 days, then it's time to go back to the product market fit hypothesis. And this is where you need to update your hypothesis, update your marketing assets in your funnel, and then try again. So this is how it works in practice. So let's say you're not generating leads. Well, then you need to go back up, update your hypothesis, update the assets and update the funnel, and then you drive traffic to them again. And it's important to say you need consistent effort. So you need enough eyeballs to the assets. And like I said, I can't break down exactly how that all works in practice, but you're going to create content around your thesis. You're going to put that in front of your target customers and see if they resonate it and see if it starts to generate leads for you. Now, once you are generating leads, you then get to move on to the sales process. So the next step here is when you're consistently generating inbound leads, that's when you would move on to sales. So here's where you're going to create or update your existing sales process. So it's much easier to do sales when you're driving inbound leads, trust me. So when people know who you are, they know your track record, they know your thesis, they've seen your marketing and growth assets, it becomes much easier to do sales. So it doesn't need a very complicated sales process. It's going to be something simple. You're basically going to run them through what your thesis is again and just give them a refresher on their thesis. You'll obviously start with a bit of a discovery process. Assuming that they're a good fit, you're going to then talk about your thesis. And only once they're bought into your thesis will you then share some details about how your product or service works. Far too many people, they jump straight to the selling of the product or service, and they haven't clarified if this person is a good fit to work with them, and they haven't clarified if the person actually buys into their thesis and methodology around whatever they're doing. So it's really important to do things in the right order there. You'll need to validate your price point, but also your sales process at this point. You want to find the right balance between close rate, cash collected, and also reducing friction throughout the process. Typically, we're aiming for a close rate of maybe 20 to 40% here in B2B. Any less than that is probably not enough to make the engine profitable. You know, if it costs us X amount per lead and we're not closing enough of those leads, then it may not be a profitable funnel overall. And any more than that, we're probably charging a little too little, and we probably need to raise our prices. So you can move on to the next milestone when you're closing leads at 20% or more. You've validated your price point and you've validated your sales process. So here you'll see close on revenue, yes. If not, obviously you'll just go back and keep updating and testing things until you are. Now at this stage, this is where it starts to get fun, right? Because we now have a clear product market fit hypothesis. We've got our growth assets. We've got a simple funnel. We're driving traffic to that funnel and it's generating its leads. So we've solved a big part of the equation here. And we also have a sales process that's taking those leads and turning them into close won revenue. So we're in a good spot here. And this is kind of the fun part because we get to scale up the system. So we sometimes call this an inbound client acquisition machine. And it's time for us to scale it up. So typically what we're aiming for in terms of a measurement of success is our lifetime gross profit to customer acquisition cost ratio. So we want at least a 5-to-1 and ideally a 10-to-1 or more, meaning for every dollar that we spend on marketing, we're generating at least $5 of gross profit, if not 10 or more dollars of gross profit for our business to ensure that we're mega profitable as we scale up. You want to maximize your existing channels and then launch new ones once you've got the most you can out of your existing channels. This is where you can hire or you can outsource to experts to run and scale the channels for you. So the problem is most people do this here at the start of the process rather than waiting till the end. So they hire, let's say, a Google Ads agency but they haven't validated their product market fit hypothesis. They don't have the right growth assets, and they aren't consistently generating leads. And a Google Ads agency is very unlikely to be able to help you with that, or a marketing manager is very unlikely to be able to help you with that. But at this stage, when you're looking to scale up and you need that sort of technical in-channel experience, that's where it can be valuable. So here's where you might outsource or you might hire an expert to run certain aspects of the process. And then the beautiful part here is that we're going to continue to feed the insights from this back into the market message. So back into the product market fit hypothesis, so that it spins faster and faster, and then the results get better and better and better over time. So that's the framework end to end. I hope that makes sense to you. I've tried to make it as simple as possible. And what I'll do is I'll show you some examples and signs that you found market resonance and signs that this is going well. And I'll give you some examples of case studies as well. So the main outcome here, the main thing that we're optimizing for is you will have, if you found market resonance and you've got a predictable system for distributing that message, you will have an inbound client acquisition machine. So it's consistent, predictable, and very profitable growth. So you'll have your ideal customers coming to you and asking to work with you. Calls will just sort of land in your calendar. And I mean, these are some examples of snapshots from our business. This is Calendly, which is what we use to schedule most of our calls. You can see this was Thursday the 4th. I had 6 back-to-back calls. I don't know when I'm going to have a break for the bathroom on that day, but 6 back-to-back calls in one day. A lot of these, they just sort of pop into your calendar. You don't feel like you have to chase people and like force them onto a call with you. This is a short video here of a whole bunch of strategy sessions that we've booked over the last few months. And then you'll also have people coming to you and saying, you know, you summed our situation up perfectly, or what you said really, really resonated with me. You'll also tend to find that the close rates on these sales calls are pretty high, and you'll get that element of offline and online virality. A really good example of this is a partner that we just started working with. They actually went viral on their first batch of new content on LinkedIn, which is a good sign that you've got something that truly resonates. There's not the be all and end all. We're not aiming for virality necessarily, and it doesn't necessarily, like, virality doesn't always mean revenue, but it is certainly a good sign that you've got a message that's really, really resonating with the target audience. Few more examples here. So we're working with a company called Ambrose Bookkeepers at the moment. They filled up their client roster within a year of working with us. So they actually had to implement a wait list because they had so many more new clients that they signed, which I think is a good problem to have. Another good problem to have is Charlotte from the Ox Crouches, that we have so many inbound leads, we don't know what to do with them. So before working with us, they sort of struggled with consistency. And so they would generate leads, but then it wasn't at a consistent level. And occasionally they'd have to take on projects that they didn't really want. It was sort of a feast or famine situation. Within a few months, they had a calendar full of inbound sales calls. They had a significant increase in their monthly revenue. We actually increased their prices as well. So really repositioned the business in a great state. And they saw a great result from this framework. Another example is Plasma. This is a business we've been working with for some years now. So before working with us, they were relying on referrals. So all of their new business came from referrals. They've been around for 25 years before that. Really, their messaging needed to be clarified. So what we did is we went through clarifying their message. We built them the marketing assets that they need, the case study, the sales letter, video sales letter. And within a few months, they generated their first inbound leads, significant increase in the leads that they generated. And now, a few years on, they still, every single month, they have a full pipeline of high LTV deals kind of waiting to close, and they never have to worry about where their next deal is coming from. And then final example I'll give you here, or final couple of examples. This is a business called Ibly. They generated their first new deal from LinkedIn within a few weeks of implementing this system. So that's quite a quick result. So just to say, it doesn't have to take a long time. You can generate results really quickly if you do this well, and you get a bit of luck as well. And then finally, this is just a fun story of a client of ours who booked in meetings with SpaceX and Tesla and signed one of them as a client. So that's the framework. I hope that was a really valuable video for you. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.